never know if you don't go. You'll never shine if you don't glow. Hey now, you're an all-star. Get your game on, go play. Hey now, you're a rock star. Get the show on, get paid. Only shooting stars break the mold.
Welcome to another episode of the NRL Allstars podcast. Barnesy here, your host of the Allstars podcast, here for TLT, round 5 for Supercoach. And it is a big week. There is a lot happening. This is going to be one of our short quickfire episodes, done in under 20 minutes. So easy listening for everyone, touching on the key points for the round. Unfortunately, just work commitments as well as not being too well this week myself. So that's gotten in the way of getting our normal hour-long type show out there for this week. But we're still going to get this TLT out there. And you will get a dose of Mikey back next week after the Easter long weekend. So make sure, before we even get started, jump onto YouTube, iTunes and Spotify. Make sure you subscribe there so you do get the episodes as soon as they drop. I get asked a lot, oh, is there a show out for this week yet? And for this week, I got asked last night, Tuesday night, and I was like, yep, it's coming. If you subscribe, it'll drop straight away. But let's get straight to it, okay? So having a look at it for this week, it is, look, let's go from strategy first. I was going to say Market Watch, but when I'm looking at Market Watch, there was just a few things that I think that we need to talk about. I've gotten a lot of questions from newer super coaches who have asked me specifically, like, when is the right time to sell your cash cows? And I know that for seasoned super coaches, it might sound easy. It's like when they're peaked. But when they're peaked is quite subjective. I even saw Tommy Sangster saying, look, Farmani for the Titans and Setu for the Dragons, these are the sort of guys you can just cull now. I tend to disagree, and it is a bit subjective. So, you know, there is no 100% right or wrong answer sometimes. But look, Farmani, for example, he's got a 25 break even. He's not going to lose cash at the moment. And one of the things that's really important, I think, as a strategy is positionally, cash cows are a lot easier to hold if they're backs. All they need is a try, and Farmani will go over for a try eventually. He might even get a double. And if he gets something like a double, he's just going to skyrocket in value. He'll earn at least another 100K more. So it's one of those things where if you can be patient, particularly with your backs, and they're not going to necessarily bleed cash, I actually think that you always want to try and hold them as long as possible until they obviously get a really high break even or they've made a lot of money. The problem with guys like Setu and Farmani is that they just haven't made a huge amount of money yet. And really, you know, our old guideline was always 100K plus is what you want to make out of a trade. And guys like Setu, you know, what are we at? Like 63,000. That's not anywhere near enough value to be trading him out. He's got a 5 break even. He could easily be back in the Dragons lineup in a couple of weeks' time. So I just think that if you can hold him, you need to. Now, if you can't, or there is some really big priorities to make money that have huge negative break evens, you can always bite the bullet and do that. I don't see that this week, though. I see it as a week that you could easily hold guys like Farmani and even Setu too, where you can just sit on the bench and just leave. Use as a loop as well for 2 in your centre wing. So that's just a bit of strategy, a bit of an opinion on when you should be selling your cows and stuff. But let's have a look at Market Watch very quickly. The traded out guys like Moses Leo, I think, are a little bit different because he's got a 48 break even and he's been scoring very low and he's lost his job. He's only made 82,000, but it's a lot better than guys like Farmani and two. And at the end of the day, it doesn't look like that he'll be back anytime soon with some of the comments that Bellamy has made as well. That could change. I think that you could easily hold him though, because one of the things is with his break even creeping up, it was going to be one of those times where you needed to sell him to stop yourself from bleeding cash potentially, particularly with the Panthers lineup this week. I actually think the fact that he's been dropped makes it a lot easier to hold him because you're not going to have any risk of him losing money and you can do some other priorities. But look, he's out of the cheapy cow guys. He's certainly the one that you could afford the most to get rid of. A lot of guys being given up on like Kinney and Marnie, and I think that makes sense. Brian Toto, I tell you what, I could not wait till lockout ended to sell him. It's just been very disappointing. One of those things that just doesn't work out. He was a cheap enough price where it didn't really matter if he wasn't going big, but he's 21 on the weekend. He never scores that low. And watching the games at the moment, and I've had a lot of questions about Toto. that you do think it'll go right more. It's got to go right more. He'll get an opportunity. I just don't think that it will. And the problem is that even when it did go right, it sort of ended at Alamotti and didn't even get out to him a lot of the time. So Brian Toto is just not getting any ball, even when it does go out there. And it doesn't go out there very often, which is why Jenkins is going so well on the left. When I was big on starting with Brian, it was because he was meant to be a left winger at the start. And then they made the tango change and Alamotti went to the centres and obviously Jenkins on that wing. And that really hurt things a lot. If I had have known that in time when I was setting up my team for round one before Vegas, I probably would have gone elsewhere. But look, I think it's easier to cut your losses on him. You've only lost 23,000. I'll be doing it. There's a lot of options. Other guys make sense because they're all injured. James Tedesco is probably the one that stands out because he's normally a longer term keeper. I am considering trading him myself, not really because I'm hugely disappointed, mainly because he's on the bye and I am wanting to chase and make up ground. If you're well ahead, you could easily hold him. But the problem is if you're not ahead, there's just too many great options that we're going to talk about in a moment, like Reece Walsh. And I just think that it's a week that you just can't afford to if you're chasing. Now, 46 last game against Manly was really disappointing. The conditions weren't great. He's only averaging 68 for the year. He's lost 100K. I will look at buying him back pretty quickly, potentially. I actually think that the post-buy Roosters run is quite exceptional. So let's have a look at that quickly because everyone's jumping off the Roosters. I'm a stern Angus Crichton holder as well. He's not been going great, but not great for him. Still been 50s every single week. And when you look at the run, they've got the Sharkies away in Perth, which isn't phenomenal, but it's not bad. And then the run's really nice. They've got the Newcastle Knights at Allianz, the Dragons at Allianz for Anzac Day, the Broncos at Allianz, and then the Titans away, and then the Cowboys for Magic Round. I would argue every single one of those matchups, bar the Sharks in Perth, is actually a really good one that you'd want to target. So I am keen in a couple of weeks to revisit if I could get Tedesco back. It is burning trades, which is why if you've got the luxury this week of going pretty well, you can easily hold Teddy, I think, including other Roosters, which you could just hold like an Angus. I'm eyeing off that run. I think it's a really good one to target Roosters. We're not quite there yet, though, so I get people jumping off potentially. The traded in's the most interesting for this week. Simi Sasangi, really good trade-in option, but we've just kept having, I guess, the question marks on what's going to happen to his role. Ricky has, in the last couple of weeks, said multiple times that Timoko would be back at some point. He just had to get his match fitness. That's, by the week, seeming more and more unlikely now. So at 528,000, couldn't talk anyone out of that. I do think it's a good trade. Likewise, Arama Howe, I think, is going to be a good one to be looking at. But my trade of the week is certainly Reece Walsh. Third most popular trade in at the moment. He is already heavily owned. Now, one of the things that's heavily owned, guys, 28%. He's not that high owned. He's not 50%. And he is playing the Titans in a dream matchup. And the Broncos have the best run, in my opinion, over the next month of football. Some of those high-owned guys, you just got to get in just to alleviate any risk of missing out on those ones and things like that. Reece Walsh can obviously do that. Had a very astute listener comment and mention to me that last year Walsh only had 1 ton without Adam Reynolds. With Adam Reynolds in the team, most of his tons came when Reynolds was out. That is fine. He can get 95 every game and that's okay. He's just got that good a run. And at his price as well, I think that he's attainable at 790,000. It's one of those things where you have a look at the Gold Coast Titans and, yep, they got their first win of the season against the Dragons, but I just don't see how the Broncos don't put on points against them. They got Payne Haas back this week as well, which is big. Walsh has averaged 75 against them in his career. On his career, that's not great. It's not bad. It's sort of in the middle, but it just seems like a dream matchup. Now, if it doesn't go well, the following week he's against the Cowboys. The next week he's got the Tigers. It's just a really good few weeks of footy for him. By the fourth week, it does get harder with the Bulldogs, but then he's got the Roosters, Manly and New Zealand who are going to be playing at Suncorp for Magic Round, which the Broncos will always get up for. So really like Reece Walsh, particularly over the next few weeks. I would say if you're not going to buy him this week, I think you miss out on a lot of the value, and this is the problem. You got to buy guys when they're going to give you maximum value if you're paying up for elite points. And if a guy's got 2 or 3 weeks of a really good run that you want to hit and you miss one of them, the value is highly diminished if you're going to wait until the following week. So I'm big on prioritising him this week any way that you can, basically. Fini Fuiaki, this podcast has loved right from the beginning. One that I've actually gotten right, which is nice to see. I still think he's a great buy at 621,000. He's still presenting huge value. He's running against a Manly edge this week where I can easily see him go over a try and he could be 100 plus again on the scoreboard. I'd love to get him in. So, 100%. Everyone trading him in should be. Nathan Cleary, look, I've seen must-have thrown around. He had a really good week last week, went 100 plus against the Eels, but he's playing the Storm this week. The Storm didn't look great last week. They've got 2 losses in a row. Certainly, Penrith are huge favourites. I just don't love it. And Nathan Cleary's top 2 worst matchups, one of them is the Storm. And he just hasn't scored well against them for his career. I believe it's a 59 average, so it's not great for him. He might buck that. He could be on a run. But if you don't own him, I feel like that other guys like Reece Walsh are probably better to get this week. I think that if you don't own some of the Storm big guns like the Harry Grants and so forth and some of the Penrith big guns like the Clearys, all of us non-owners would get a bit of a relief and a reprieve this week to not have those guys because I just don't think that game is going to produce a massive Supercoach scores of 120 and stuff for some of these players. So I think it's easy to wait. Adam Dewey, great trade in playing Parramatta this week. Interesting that we've got Brandon Smith getting traded in quite a bit. Now, I'm going to actually support this a little bit. There's people that are trading in Tavana for the Tigers. He's actually the 5th most popular traded. And coaches are doing that because they're going to have to make a downgrade to make an upgrade potentially. And that's why I see a lot of them doing it. Now, I don't think there's any job security there at all. Whereas with Brandon Smith, when he comes back, he is going to play. So I would rather go for someone who has a defined role, definitely in the 17, that is close to bottom dollar price at 235,000, then take a risk on a guy that could be dropped the following week in Tavana. He's only just made his debut last week. So I certainly would rather go that route. I'm just going to give a quick thought on some of the games and some other players that are involved as well. The first game being the Dolphins versus Manly. I tell you what, Herbie actually doesn't have a very good career against the Sea Eagles, but I am 100% looking at him as a huge VC option this week. He's gone 75, 78, 85, 82, and it's got to be said he's averaging 80 plus with 1 try in 4 games. And I think he's only got 1 line break too, I'm pretty sure. So it's just massive the amount of offloads and tackle breaks he's doing. He's getting 3 or 4 offloads a game. He's getting more than that in his actual tackle breaks as well. It's just huge. And if all he needs is 1 line break try this week, and he's going 100 plus, and it could be a very loopable score. He's also got that 150 plus potential. So playing at home versus Manly, really, really like Herbie this week because it's the first game. It's really easy to loop as well. Other one that's interesting is Asako, not highly owned and coming off a big score. I looked at him as well at 665,000. It is pretty good value. 111 points, 98 in his last 2, and an 82 average for the season across his 4. He's obviously kicking a lot of goals. He could kick a lot of goals this week as well. So I could see the ton this week. And this is one of those trades that's really tricky because 100%, if you're just looking at this week, it looks great, and I think it is great. The problem is that you've got to look longer term on some of these trades. And at 665,000, you're going to get a good score this week. Then he's on a bye. And then he's going to play Penrith. And then he's going to be away in New Zealand versus the Warriors. Then he's going to be at home versus Storm and the Bulldogs. After the bye, the Dolphins' run is horrific. It is really bad. And in fact, after this week, you could say it's really bad because copping a bye is pretty tough next week for owners that have, say, Asako and Herbie in their centre wing. So I think that just rules him out as a purchase, unfortunately. The Melbourne Storm game, I already kind of mentioned that I think that there'll be some lower scoring. Really interesting point of the season now because guys like Farlongo have gone up massively and he's been an absolute revelation. I really believed in him as a Supercoach option, and now he's averaging 111 points for the season. 116, 155, 79 and 93. You could have captained him every week and been pretty happy. But he has played really quite easy opposition each of those weeks. He is over 750,000 in value. He's gone up 250K. At this point, if it's a cow, you sell them. because he has got a break even in the 70s, but a lot of the time cows become keepers. He has certainly become a keeper, and I'm sure that he will be a keeper. The problem with Farlongo is twofold. One, he's in a position where you have Walsh, you also in future weeks have Teddy, you got Turbo going well, you got Edwards going well. Drinkwater, we're going to talk about soon, is my favourite pod this week. Like, there is that many options, and it's not that we think that he's not going to be a keeper. It's just that possibly at the fullback and flex spots, you're going to have to alternate during the season, especially if you want to chase, which brings me to the second point with Farlongo. He's 70% owned. If you want to chase, it's not going to be by riding Farlongo. Now, Penrith this week is a great opportunity where it's a tougher game. They're at home next week, but it's against the Warriors, who have been playing really well. Canberra at GIO. Okay, that's not a great few weeks. So I do think it is quite aggressive, certainly a lot of risk involved, but I do think that there is potential where you could jump off Farlongo if you want to chase aggressively. There's going to be some lower scores for him. I still think he's going to go well for the season, but like I said, if you trade him to, say, Walsh, and over the next 3 weeks of Walsh's great run, Walsh averages 98 and Farlongo averages 70, it's not bad, the average for Farlongo, but you're going to kill it with Walsh over that period and beat that score quite significantly. So those are the sort of little moves that you've kind of got to start to think about now. Cleary and IPAP, obviously both really big options, even in this game. I'm really bummed that I missed out on IPAP last week, but I'm kind of happy with not either of them this week. I don't really have to push to get them in, I don't think, playing the Storm in a tough one. Dragons versus Cowboys. This one is got some options that I really like. I brought in Valentine Holmes last week, and despite the fact that the Dragons could not score points, Holmes still scored 75. And this is what I said with Holmes all week. 75, 80, 94, 54, 76 average, and he can't get tries. The Dragons can't get points on the board, and he's the goal kicker, and he's still doing this. At 738,000, he's a premium option. People are not going to pay for it. He was 6% last week, went up slightly, but he's still a pod this week. And he's playing the Cowboys, his old club, that I'm sure he's going to get up for. Now, his Cowboys average is actually not very good. It's one of only 3 teams where he hasn't turned up against. He's only got a high of 82. So historically, it doesn't say it's a good matchup, but I'm banking on it. I'm glad I got him in for last week, and I think that he's a rock-solid option at the moment. With their run, the Dragons will play at Win next week and play that one against Manly as well, which is a good matchup. So Holmes is nice, but in this one on the other side, my pot of the week is Drinkwater. I was surprised. I actually held him, and the last couple of weeks he's gone 90 plus, so I feel pretty vindicated. But I was surprised that his ownership has dropped all the way to 4%. 4% for a guy with that type of ceiling playing the Dragons. This is a golden game for him. In 2025 and 2024, he's only played the Dragons twice, but each of those games resulted in 105 and 91 points from Drinky. And obviously he's gone that 90 plus the last 2 weeks. I want to be playing guys like Drinkwater at 4% when they get to that type of ownership. And I actually think that he's a really hot VC or even a big balls captain option this week with the way he looks, the way he's attacking, and the fact that the Dragons are probably going to give up points to them even at home. So a couple of big pods there, but then you look at the next game. Okay, Sharkies Warriors, couple key things to talk about here. Hines captain, sounds good. We all know that a couple of years ago he put 185 on the Warriors. Problem is, the last 2 years he's actually gone really badly. I was surprised about this number too, but he went like 46, 27, 59. His last 3 games between 2024 and 2025 have not been good. He has been solid as a bank though, Hines, in not doing a lot and being able to score well still this year. 100, 81, 41, 131. He's actually got 2 out of 4 tons this year, and 3 out of those 4 games are really good scores. So, at Shark Park versus the Warriors, I do think he'll buck the recent trend. Now, I said 2024, 2025, he's gone badly against the Warriors. If you look at 2023, 2022, those 3 games were massive. He averages like 130 between those 3 games. That includes a 185 and another ton, but still, I think that he can revert back to that. I think that he can have a good week this week. The Sharks are under the pump. And speaking about the Sharks under the pump, you know a guy that's been under the pump? Ero. Ero has been disappointing. He went over for a try on the weekend, and it didn't really matter too much. So he only scored 65 points with that try. 34 raw base is the worst that he's had all year, and that has been the story for him. He just hasn't gotten the base power going to the level that he's had before, and he hasn't gone on a try-scoring run yet. I say yet because I actually am looking at him as a guy at 11% and dropping. He could get into pod territory this week, and I'm expecting his 56 average to turn around. He has the Warriors and then the Roosters in Perth. Then he has a bye. The bye is really annoying. Even the Roosters matchup isn't the best one, although it's not the worst. But after that, he comes into round 8 with the Cows, the Tigers, Souths, Bulldogs, and then a bye. But then he comes out of that bye if you want to keep holding him versus Manly and the Dragons. So he's got a decent run of games. It's just that real critical bye in there in round 7 that's annoying, and whether the Sharks can step up at home this week. 626,000, I think it's a bargain. If you have him, I would not sell him at the moment. If you don't have him, you could look at him this week and try and get on early for a bit of a try-scoring run, which we know he can do. Or you could just put him in your black book and wait and watch. On the other side of things, Jackson Ford, damn it. I'm going to say this is a loss for me as a Jackson Ford Death Rider, even though he did play less minutes like I thought he would, and he only scored 60, which I don't think was worth $700,000 as an investment. But I'm not going to crow about being right, because at the end of the day, Mitch Barnett's just gone down. So if you're a Jackson Ford owner, you should be very happy at the moment, because Mitch Barnett going back down with a broken hand, possibly out for 6 weeks, that's your way and your path to Jackson Ford getting big minutes again. So, that might happen. That's a bit of luck, but that's what happens in Supercoach. I still stand by my comments that I didn't think he was a great trade at that price. I preferred IPAP for 150k less and some of these other guys. But if you're a Ford owner, you're going to go well still to hold him. I wouldn't worry about the 60 because Barnett's now out. You definitely want to watch and see what happens. Raiders. I've got a couple of big watches in the Raiders looking at this team. Coming up against Newcastle, I love Hudson Young as a pod purchase at the moment. He went for 108 last week. That was Dom Young, not Hudson. Jeez, that's the opposition. Went for 79 on the weekend with his first try of the season. But he's now gone to 85, 58, 95, and 79. You're still going to get him at a slightly reduced price at 741,000, but you're going to have to pay up. Now, people have said that he's been disappointing this year. He's actually averaging more than what he has ever in his career. 2026 is 79 points a game. 2025 was his best, and that was 77. He's actually going really well. He's got a raw base of 52, plus all those offloads and tackle breaks. I really like him at the moment. Playing against the edge for Newcastle, I expect some attack. He's then got Souths. Tough one against the Storm, but it is at home at least. But then he hits the Tigers and then the Titans. Now, that is a good 5-week run of football. One tough one against the Storm. The other 4 are pretty good matchups for him against those edges. So I think it's a real pod time for Hudson Young. He would be my pick of the Fords if you wanted to get on someone like that nobody else is buying at the moment. I've also got a big watch on another Ford in the Raiders pack, and that is Joe Tarpany. This always happens at this point of the year. We're waiting for Tarpany to get cheap, and he's down to 621,000 with a pretty high break even. He's going to go down a bit cheaper. He might be in the 500s in the next fortnight. He's got that same run, but the big thing with Tarpany to consider is that he's going to play the round 12 bye and the round 15 bye. And that's always what Tarpany's good for. And it's also going to coincide really nicely with, in a few weeks, someone like Paseka being able to be upgraded for maybe 100 to 150k. And that's going to be a fantastic trade. So you've got to watch these guys because you kind of forget about them a little bit and you miss the value point to buy them. Tamale as a pod option, I know a lot of people were really big on Tamale in the preseason. His work rate hasn't quite been there, but the first 2 weeks he was disappointing at 52 and 40 points. 84 and 100 the last 2 weeks with 3 tries. He is rolling and he's still sub 600k. About 590,000 you can get Tamale in, and I think that's a pretty good deal, particularly with the run that they've got. I'm going to finish off on the Eels game as the last game and look at Joash Papali'i. He's now got potentially 8 weeks to play fullback, and he's a 5'8" player at just over 300k. It's going to depend on what you've got in your 5'8" spot. If you want to get off Cody Walker, you can make about $1 on a swap trade down, and Papali'i might actually score better than him. Averaged 54.25 points per game as a starting number 1 in 2025 across 4 games. I expect similar. It's not great, but it's not terrible. and you could put him there and you could certainly make 150k potentially. Bit of risk there if he's your 581 though. That's the issue. Would I trade Pezzett to him? No, I wouldn't. I'd wait for Pezzett to make more money, but yeah, certainly I think that more people should probably be looking at Papali'i at the fullback spot because he's got pretty good job security now for a while and he's pretty talented. That's going to be the podcast for this week. But before I finish up, I need to mention the great sponsor of the All Stars podcast in One World Courier. oneworldcourier.com.au. Go there, do a free account. Any shipping or freight that you have, they'll take care of it for you. It is a phenomenal service. And when you do sign up, it says, how did you hear about us? Put NRL All-Stars podcast. They'll give you some nice rates to start with. But basically, if you've got anything to send, whether through your business or a business that you work for, you can pop in what you want to send and where. They'll give you all the prices and all the providers to choose from, and you choose them, and then One World Courier takes care of all of it for you. They're a great service and great supporter of the NRL All-Stars podcast. YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, everyone knows where to follow us, but I'd love to get some more subscribers on board. We'll be back with a full episode next week. It is an Easter long weekend, so enjoy it. Enjoy the footy. We get Monday football once again with Easter Monday, the Good Friday fixture during the day. It's going to be fantastic. Can't wait to chat about all of it again and some more Supercoach next week.
You'll never know if you don't go. You'll never shine if you don't glow. Hey now, you're an all-star. Get your game on, go play. Hey now, you're a rock star. Put the show on, get paid.